The Vorthak Empire had been systematically exterminating species across the galaxy for 3,000 years when humanity first detected the approaching darkness. Admiral Kestrix Valorian stood on the bridge of the UES Steadfast, watching the gravitational anomaly readings spike beyond comprehension. What emerged from the Fold Space Rift wasn't another desperate refugee fleet or a Vorthak dreadnought. It was something that defied classification. The vessel stretched 40 kilometers in length, its hull absorbing light like a wound in reality itself. No emissions, no communications, no energy signatures that their sensors could interpret. It simply existed, a geometric impossibility that hurt to look at directly through the viewports. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Raven Ashworth's voice carried an edge of barely controlled fear. "It's not responding to any of our hails. Whatever it is, it's heading straight for the Vorthak staging ground at Kepler 442. The war had been going poorly for the Terran Alliance and their coalition of surviving species. The Vorthak possessed technology that bordered on the mystical, reality-warping weapons that could delete entire star systems, bioships that adapted to any attack, and worst of all, the ability to turn conquered species into mindless servants through their neural parasites. Humanity had been fighting for 18 months, ever since the Vorthak fleet had emerged from the galactic core like a plague of locusts. Earth's population had been evacuated to the outer colonies, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. The enemy didn't just conquer, they consumed, leaving nothing but sterile worlds in their wake. "Admiral," came the voice of Dr. Lyrian. "Blackthorn from the science station. I'm detecting massive temporal distortions around that vessel. The chronometer readings are impossible. According to my instruments, that ship is simultaneously brand new and older than the galaxy itself." Valorian had commanded fleets through the Centauri Wars and the Prometheus incident, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Black Ship moved with purpose, ignoring the human fleet entirely as it accelerated toward the Vorthak position. Its trajectory would take it directly through the heart of their armada, over 10,000 vessels arranged in a perfect sphere around the captured system. The Vorthak response was immediate and overwhelming. Reality twisted as their weapons opened. Fire, pouring enough destructive energy to crack planets into the approaching darkness. Gravity bombs that could collapse stars, viral munitions that rewrote the fundamental forces of physics, energy beams that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, all of it focused on the lone intruder. The attacks simply disappeared. Not deflected or absorbed, but erased from existence as if they had never been fired at all. The Black Ship continued its approach without deviation, without apparent effort, without any acknowledgement that it had just survived an assault capable of sterilizing solar systems. "By the void," whispered Commander Thane Silverwind from the tactical station. "It's not even slowing down." As the vessel crossed into the Vorthak perimeter, something extraordinary happened. The enemy ships began to change. Their organic hulls started crystallizing, transforming from living tissue into something that resembled volcanic glass. One by one, the massive bioships simply stopped, hanging motionless in space as their crews presumably struggled to understand what was happening to them. The Black Ship reached the center of the Vorthak formation and came to a complete stop. For 17 minutes, nothing happened. Then, without warning or visible cause, every single Vorthak vessel in the system began to collapse inward, compressing into perfect spheres before winking out of existence entirely. 10,000 ships, gone, not destroyed, simply gone, as if they had never existed at all. The Black Ship turned slowly, its impossible geometry shifting in ways that made the human observer's eyes water. Then it began moving again, heading for the next Vorthak position at Tau Ceti. Admiral Valorian realized with growing wonder and terror that they weren't witnessing a battle. They were witnessing an extermination. News of the Tau Ceti incident reached the human fleet 3 hours later. The same pattern: arrival, resistance, transformation, disappearance. 12,000 Vorthak vessels, including 3 of their legendary World Eater dreadnoughts, had simply ceased to exist. The BlackShip moved on without pause, heading for the next concentration of enemy forces. Dr. Blackthorne worked frantically at her station, trying to make sense of the sensor data. "Admiral, I'm detecting quantum signatures I've never seen before. This isn't technology as we understand it. It's something fundamental, something that operates on the basic structure of reality itself." Captain Zorian Nightfall, commander of the carrier Indomitable, appeared on the main screen via quantum link. His usually composed demeanor showed cracks of disbelief. "Kestrix, we're receiving reports from across the sector. Every Vorthak position, within 50 light-years, has gone silent. Not destroyed, silent. As in they're not there anymore." The implications were staggering. The Vorthak Empire controlled roughly 40% of the galaxy's habitable systems. If something was systematically erasing their presence from existence, the balance of power was shifting in ways that defied comprehension. "Sir, Lieutenant," Ashworth interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from Earth." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the haggard face of General Caspian Ironforge, speaking from the emergency command center buried beneath the Rockies. Behind him, displays showed tactical information that should have been impossible. "All fleet commanders, this is Priority Alpha Command. We've been monitoring the situation through our deep space arrays. Whatever that vessel is, it's methodically hunting down every Vorthak concentration in the galaxy. Current projections suggest complete elimination of all enemy forces within 72 hours. Valorian felt the weight of command pressing down on him. "General, what are your orders? Do we attempt contact? Maintain distance? This entity?" "Entity?" Ironforge's laugh carried no humor. "Admiral, we've been analyzing the quantum signatures. That ship isn't alien. The harmonic resonance patterns, the dimensional frequency. It's human, Kestrix. Impossibly, inexplicably human." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Human technology, even their most advanced prototypes, couldn't approach what they were witnessing. The BlackShip operated on principles that seemed to violate causality itself. Dr. Blackthorne looked up from her console, her face pale. "Admiral, if I may, I've been running calculations based on the temporal distortions we detected. The chronometer readings I mentioned earlier, they're not random. The ship appears to exist in a state of temporal flux, but there's a pattern. It's as if it's from a future where humanity has transcended our current understanding of physics entirely." "Time travel?" Commander Silverwind scoffed. "That's theoretical at best, and the paradoxes alone? Not time travel," Blackthorne interrupted. "Time loop. The ship exists in all temporal states simultaneously. Past, present, future, they're all the same to it. Which means..." She trailed off, her eyes widening with realization. "Which means what, Doctor?" Valorian demanded. "Which means this isn't the first time this has happened. The Vorthak Empire, their conquest of the galaxy, humanity's near extinction. It's all happened before, and every time, when we're pushed to the brink, that ship appears to reset the timeline." The implications were mind-boggling. If Blackthorne was correct, then humanity's survival wasn't just guaranteed, it was inevitable. But at what cost? And who or what had the power to manipulate time itself on such a massive scale? As if summoned by their speculation, the BlackShip appeared on their sensors again. It had finished with the Centauri cluster and was now heading for the Vorthak home fleet near the Galactic core. But this time, it wasn't alone. "Admiral," Ashworth's voice was barely a whisper, "I'm detecting multiple contacts, dozens of them, all identical to the first vessel." The tactical display updated, showing a fleet of impossibility. 47 black ships, each one a geometric paradox that hurt to perceive directly, converging on the greatest concentration of Vorthak forces in the galaxy. The enemy's core fleet contained over 1 million vessels, including their command ships and the dreaded reality weavers, weapons capable of rewriting the laws of physics in localized space. It wouldn't matter. Valorian realized with crystal clarity that they were about to witness the end of the Vorthak Empire, and possibly the revelation of humanity's true destiny among the stars. The Vorthak home fleet at Sagittarius Prime represented 3 millennia of conquest and evolution. Over 1.2 million vessels formed concentric shells around their origin world, a massive artificial construct that had been built by consuming entire solar systems. At its heart lay the Nexus of Dominion, a weapon that could project the Vorthak neural parasites across galactic distances, enslaving entire species without the need for physical invasion. Supreme Overlord Vexthara, eldest of the Vorthak Primarchs, felt something it had not experienced in 3,000 years: uncertainty. The reports from the frontier sectors made no sense. Entire fleets simply vanishing, not destroyed but erased from existence as if they had never been. The concept was so alien to Vorthak understanding that many of the lesser castes had begun exhibiting signs of system shock. The vessel's approach, hissed War Prime Nethgalak, its biomechanical form twitching with nervous energy. 47 unknowns, designation impossible. Our seers report temporal anomalies beyond measurement. Through the vast neural network that connected all Vorthak. Vexthara felt the fear of its subordinates. Fear was death to their species. It disrupted the biomechanical integration that gave them their power. And yet, as the black ships approached, fear was all they had left. Aboard the UES Steadfast, Admiral Valorian watched the confrontation unfold through long-range sensors. The human fleet had followed at maximum distance, knowing they were witnessing something that would reshape galactic history. "The Vorthak are deploying everything," reported Commander Silverwind. "Reality weavers are online, temporal anchors are active. They're even activating the dimensional fortress protocols around their home construct. Dr. Blackthorn's instruments showed readings that defied interpretation. Admiral, the space around Sagittarius Prime is being restructured. The Vorthak are literally changing the laws of physics in a sphere roughly 10 light years in diameter. Gravity is operating backwards, time is flowing in loops, and they've created zones where matter and energy can't exist." It was the ultimate defense, a fortress of impossibility that had never been breached. The Vorthak home fleet didn't just control space, they rewrote it according to their will. The 47 black ships entered the restructured zone without hesitation. What happened next challenged every understanding of reality that the human observers possessed. The Vorthak weapons fired, pouring enough destructive force to shatter galaxies into the approaching fleet. Reality-warping energies that could delete concepts from existence. Temporal weapons that attacked targets before they were fired. Dimensional shears that cut through the fabric of space-time itself. The black ships absorbed every attack. Not deflected, not neutralized. Absorbed, as if the weapons were simply feeding them power. With each salvo, the dark vessels seemed to become more solid, more real, as if they were drawing strength from the opposition. "Impossible," whispered Lieutenant Ashworth. "The energy readings. They're converting the attacks into something else. Into time itself." The first black ship reached the outer shell of the Vorthak formation. What followed was not a battle, but a transformation. Vorthak bioships began crystallizing upon contact, their organic hulls shifting into geometric patterns that mimicked the structure of the dark vessels. The change spread like a virus through the fleet, vessel by vessel, until entire battle groups had become something other than what they were. But this time was different. Instead of simply vanishing, the transformed Vorthak ships began to move, in perfect formation with the Black Fleet. They had become part of whatever force had come to end the war. Supreme Overlord Vexthara made a decision that would have been unthinkable days earlier. It activated the Nexus of Dominion not as a weapon of conquest, but as a beacon of surrender. The neural parasites that had enslaved countless species were broadcast not to create new servants, but to communicate a single, desperate message across all frequencies. We yield. We surrender. We offer ourselves to the darkness that comes. The response was immediate and came not through technology, but directly into the minds of every living being in the galaxy. Acceptance noted. Integration beginning. Timeline preservation protocol activated. Through the quantum link, Admiral Valorian heard reports flooding in from across human space. The Vorthak weren't just surrendering, they were disappearing. Every occupied world, every slave colony, every trace of their 3,000-year reign was simply gone. But so were the civilizations they had destroyed, somehow restored as if the conquest had never happened. Admiral, Dr. Blackthorn's voice carried a note of wonder. I'm detecting massive chronometer fluctuations across the entire galaxy. Time itself is being edited. The implications were staggering. Whatever intelligence controlled the black ships didn't just possess the power to destroy, it could rewrite history itself. In the aftermath of what would later be called the Great Restoration, the galaxy found itself in a state of impossible normalcy. Species that had been extinct for millennia walked their homeworlds again. Civilizations that had been ground to dust beneath Vorthak treads flourished as if the conquest had been nothing more than a nightmare. Admiral Valorian stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, watching Earth turn slowly below. The planet showed no signs of the desperate evacuation that had taken place just days earlier. Cities that had been empty were now filled with people who remembered no war, no exodus, no terror from the void. Only those who had been in deep space during the restoration retained memories of the conflict. A few thousand humans scattered across dozens of ships who alone remembered the dark years when extinction had seemed inevitable. The psychological evaluations are complete, reported Dr. Blackthorn, joining him at the viewport. Every person we've tested shows the same pattern. They remember the Vorthak as a historical threat that was defeated centuries ago by something called the Silent Guardians. The war we lived through. It's been edited out of their memories. Valorian nodded slowly. The black ships had departed as suddenly as they had arrived, leaving behind a galaxy that had been fundamentally altered. But questions remained. Questions that demanded answers. Doctor, your analysis of the quantum signatures. You said they were human in origin. Blackthorn pulled up a holographic display showing wave patterns that hurt to look at directly. Not just human, Admiral. Specifically human from approximately 50,000 years in the future. The harmonic resonance is like a fingerprint. It carries genetic markers that are unmistakably Terran, but evolved beyond our current understanding. 50,000 years, Valorian mused. Long enough for humanity to spread across the galaxy, to develop technologies we can't even imagine. But here's what troubles me, Blackthorn continued. The temporal reading suggests this isn't the first intervention. The black ships have been active for, well, forever. They exist outside normal time, appearing whenever a certain threshold is crossed. Before Valorian could respond, Lieutenant Commander Ashworth's voice crackled over the comm system. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. Source unknown, but it's using Terran encryption protocols I've never seen. They rushed to the communications center, where Ashworth was frantically working to decode the incoming signal. Sir, the encryption is impossibly complex, but it's definitely addressing us specifically. The header contains the names of everyone who retained their memories of the war. The main screen flickered to life, showing not a person but a symbol, a geometric pattern that seemed to shift and change as they watched it. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating directly in their minds. Greetings, ancestors. You have witnessed the 73rd iteration of the Vorthak incursion. As always, the timeline has been preserved, reality has been restored, and the future remains secure. Valorian found his voice. Who are you? What are you? We are what humanity becomes when given 50 millennia to grow beyond the constraints of linear existence. We are your descendants, your legacy, your promise fulfilled. The Vorthak were not the first threat to galactic stability, nor will they be the last. We exist to ensure that the timeline remains intact, that the future we represent continues to be possible. Dr. Blackthorne stepped forward. But why maintain the loop? Why not simply prevent the Vorthak from arising in the first place? Because the threat they represent serves a purpose. Each iteration teaches humanity valuable lessons, forges us into what we must become. Without the crucible of near extinction, we would never develop the strength to transcend our current limitations. The Vorthak are as much our creation as we are theirs. The implications were staggering. The most devastating war in galactic history was actually a training exercise, a controlled evolution designed to push humanity toward its ultimate destiny. The few who remember serve as anchors, ensuring that the lessons learned are not entirely lost. You will live your lives knowing the truth, carrying the knowledge forward. In time, some of you will join the research projects that will eventually lead to our ascension. Commander Silverwind, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. And the other species? The ones who were destroyed and restored? They too play their part in the greater pattern. Some will rise to greatness, others will fall to darkness. All serve the purpose of forging a galaxy strong enough to face what lies beyond our borders. The Vorthak were only the 73rd test. There will be more. The symbol on the screen began to fade, but the voice continued. Live well, ancestors. Know that your struggles were not in vain, that your courage echoes across the millennia. We are what we are because of what you choose to become. 6 months after the restoration, Admiral Valorian found himself leading humanity's first official expedition beyond the galactic rim. The mission had been classified at the highest levels, sanctioned only after extensive debate among the few who remembered the truth. If their descendants from the future were correct, understanding what lay beyond their galaxy's borders was crucial to humanity's survival. The expeditionary fleet consisted of 12 vessels, each crewed by volunteers who had retained their memories of the war. They were the only ones capable of accepting the reality of their situation, that they were living in a carefully orchestrated timeline designed to prepare humanity for threats they couldn't yet imagine. Captain Zara Voidhunter, commander of the Deep Space Explorer Pathfinder, had been analyzing sensor data for weeks as they approached the galactic edge. What they found challenged every assumption about the universe's structure. Admiral, she reported during their daily briefing, we're detecting massive gravitational distortions in the void between galaxies. Whatever's out there, it's big enough to affect space-time on a cosmic scale. Dr. Blackthorne, now serving as the expedition's chief science officer, added her own disturbing observations. The quantum foam shows signs of deliberate manipulation. Someone, or something, has been engineering the fundamental structure of reality in the intergalactic medium. Through the observation ports of the Steadfast, Valorian could see the edge of everything they had ever known. Beyond the last scattered stars lay darkness so complete it seemed to swallow light itself. But it wasn't empty darkness. Their instruments detected movement, purpose, intelligence. Contact, announced Lieutenant Commander Ashworth from the sensor station. Multiple objects approaching from Galactic south. They're huge, Admiral. Each one is larger than a star system. The main screen lit up with tactical displays showing formations that defied comprehension. Crystalline structures the size of solar systems moved in perfect geometric patterns through the void, their surfaces reflecting no light but somehow remaining visible against the cosmic dark. Ma'am, whispered Ensign Kai Star Weaver from the communications station, I'm detecting transmissions, not radio waves or quantum bursts, something else entirely. It's like they're speaking directly to the structure of space-time itself. Doctor, Blackthorn worked frantically to decode the transmissions, her instruments barely able to process the alien mathematics involved. "Admiral, this isn't communication as we understand it. They're literally rewriting the laws of physics in localized areas to convey information. The complexity is astronomical." As the expedition watched in awe and terror, the crystalline entities began to shift their formations. What had seemed random now revealed itself as purposeful. They were creating patterns, symbols, equations that operated on principles humanity had never encountered. "They know we're here," Valorian realized. "They're trying to communicate." The response came not through their instruments, but through the fabric of reality itself. The space around the human fleet began to change. Gravity, flowing in impossible directions, time becoming elastic, matter and energy dancing to alien rhythms. But within the chaos, patterns emerged, mathematical proofs written in the fundamental forces of the universe. Commander Thane Silverwind, now serving as the fleet's tactical coordinator, studied the readings with growing alarm. "Admiral, they're not just communicating with us, they're testing us. These reality alterations, they're problems to be solved, challenges to overcome." Dr. Blackthorn suddenly straightened at her console, her face pale with realization. "I understand now. The beings out there, they're not individual entities. They're a collective intelligence that spans multiple galaxies, and they're gardeners." "Gardeners?" Valorian prompted. "They cultivate civilizations, Admiral. Guide their development, shape their evolution. The Vorthak, the timeline loops, even our future descendants. It's all part of a vast experiment. They're determining which species have the potential to transcend their origins and join their collective." The implications were staggering. Humanity's entire history, their struggles and triumphs, their future evolution into beings capable of manipulating time itself. All of it had been guided by intelligences so advanced they treated galaxies as laboratory specimens. Captain Voidhunter's voice crackled over the comm from the Pathfinder. "Admiral, we're detecting new contacts. Multiple galaxies are responding to our presence here. Whatever test we've triggered, it's not just local, it's universal." Through the quantum link, they could see distant spirals of stars beginning to pulse with unnatural light. Entire galaxies were awakening, their collective intelligences taking notice of the small human fleet that had dared to venture beyond the familiar darkness. "Sir," Ashworth reported, her voice tight with controlled panic, "I'm detecting massive temporal distortions. The black ships, they're returning." As if summoned by the cosmic attention, 47 dark vessels materialized around the human fleet. But this time, they weren't alone. The space around them filled with ships of impossible design, vessels that seemed to be built from crystallized mathematics, craft that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, and stranger things that human perception couldn't fully process. The voice of humanity's descendants spoke directly into their minds. "The test has begun. Your species has reached the threshold where it must choose its ultimate destiny. Will you remain bound by the limitations of linear existence, or will you transcend to join the eternal collective?" Admiral Valorian realized they stood at the crossroads of human evolution. With the weight of their species' future resting on decisions they were only beginning to understand. The space between galaxies had become an arena of impossible geometries. Thousands of vessels from across the cosmos surrounded the human expeditionary fleet, each one representing a different species that had faced the same choice now confronting humanity. Some ships were clearly ancient beyond measure, their designs predating the formation of their home galaxies. Others phased in and out of visible reality, existing in temporal states that hurt to contemplate. Admiral Valorian stood on the bridge of the Steadfast, acutely aware that every decision made in the next few hours would echo across the entirety of human existence. The collective intelligence of the intergalactic gardeners had made their proposition clear. transcend linear existence and join the Eternal Council, or remain bound to the cycles of growth and extinction that governed lesser civilizations. Dr. Blackthorn worked frantically at her station, analyzing the quantum signatures of the assembled fleet. Admiral, I'm detecting species markers from across the observable universe. Some of these civilizations are older than the cosmic background radiation. They've been waiting here for longer than time has meaning. Through the comm system, reports flooded in from the other ships in the expedition. Captain Voidhunter from the Pathfinder described impossible architectures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Commander Silverwind reported energy readings that violated thermodynamics so thoroughly that their instruments had simply given up trying to process them. The voice of humanity's descendants spoke again, but this time it was joined by a chorus of other intelligences, beings so advanced that their thoughts operated on principles beyond human comprehension. The choice before you is simple in concept, yet profound in consequence. To join the Eternal Collective is to surrender individual existence in favor of universal consciousness. Your species would become part of something greater, helping to guide the evolution of younger civilizations across infinite realities. Admiral Valorian found his voice. And if we refuse? Then you return to your galaxy and continue along the path of guided evolution. The timeline loops will continue, each iteration teaching your species new lessons until you are ready to face this choice again. There is no shame in delay. Some civilizations require millions of cycles before they achieve the necessary wisdom. Dr. Blackthorn looked up from her instruments, her expression troubled. Admiral, I'm detecting something else. These quantum signatures, they're not just from different species. They're from different versions of the same species, multiple iterations of humanity, each one having faced this choice at different points in their development. The implications were staggering. How many times had human civilization reached this point? How many versions of themselves had chosen transcendence, and how many had returned to the galaxy to begin the cycle anew? As if reading their thoughts, the collective consciousness provided an answer. 17 iterations of your species have chosen transcendence. 23 have chosen to continue their individual development. Each choice serves the greater pattern. Each path leads to understanding. Lieutenant Commander Ashworth suddenly straightened at her station. Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from Earth. It's from the version of humanity that never experienced the war. The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar blue-white sphere of their homeworld. But the transmission didn't come from the surface. It originated from somewhere else, somewhere that existed in the spaces between moments. A figure appeared on screen, recognizably human, but evolved in ways that were both beautiful and terrifying. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. We are the 16th iteration of humanity to choose transcendence. We exist now as part of the Eternal Collective, helping to guide the development of our younger selves across the multiverse. The choice you face is not just for your timeline, but for all possible timelines of human existence. Valorian felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders. What would you advise? We cannot advise. The choice must be made, freely, without coercion or guidance. But we can share our experience. Transcendence brings understanding beyond imagination. But it also means the end of everything you recognize as human. You become something greater, but you cease to be yourselves. Dr. Blackthorn stepped forward. And those who chose to remain individual, they continue to grow, to struggle, to fail, and succeed according to their own nature. Some eventually develop technologies that rival our own while maintaining their individual consciousness. Others fall to dangers they cannot overcome. Both paths serve the cosmic pattern. The collective consciousness spoke again. The decision must be made unanimously by your expedition. All must agree, or all must return. This is the nature of transcendence. It cannot be chosen by some while others remain behind. Admiral Valorian looked around the bridge at the faces of his crew. Each one represented not just themselves, but the entirety of human history and potential. The weight of the decision seemed impossible to bear. "I request time to consult with my people," he said finally. "Time is a luxury we can provide. This space exists outside normal temporal flow. Take as long as you need. Eternity waits." As the expedition's senior staff gathered in the Steadfast's conference room, Valorian knew they faced the most momentous decision in human history. Outside the viewports, the assembled civilizations of the universe waited patiently for their answer, while somewhere in the cosmic dark, the future of humanity hung in the balance. The conference room aboard the Steadfast had become the focal point for a decision that would echo across infinity. Representatives from each ship in the expedition sat around the table, their faces grave with the understanding of what lay before them. They were 12 humans, barely more than specks in the cosmic order, being asked to choose the destiny of their entire species. Admiral Valorian looked at each person in turn. Captain Void Hunter, whose exploration of deep space had revealed wonders beyond imagination. Dr. Blackthorne, whose scientific mind had unraveled the mysteries of time itself. Commander Silverwind, whose tactical genius had helped them survive impossible odds. Each carried the weight of human experience and potential. "Before we begin," Valorian said quietly, "I want each of you to understand what we're truly deciding. We're not just choosing for ourselves or even for our timeline. According to the Eternal Collective, our decision will influence all possible versions of humanity across the multiverse." Dr. Blackthorne spread her hands on the table, her expression thoughtful. "The scientific implications alone are staggering. If we choose transcendence, we gain access to knowledge that spans the entirety of cosmic history. We could understand the fundamental nature of reality, help guide the development of countless civilizations, become part of something truly eternal. But we'd cease to be human," countered Captain Void Hunter. "Everything that makes us who we are, our individual thoughts, our personal relationships, our unique perspectives, all of that would be absorbed into a collective consciousness." Commander Silverwind leaned back in his chair. "From a strategic standpoint, transcendence offers ultimate security. As part of the Eternal Collective, humanity would never face extinction, but it also means surrendering the very autonomy that defines us as a species." Lieutenant Commander Ashworth, the youngest member of the group, spoke hesitantly. "What about the people back home? The billions who don't even remember the war, who are living their lives in blissful ignorance of all this cosmic drama? Don't they deserve a voice in this decision?" "They do," Valorian agreed, "but they can't be told without fundamentally altering the timeline. The burden falls to us, the few who remember, who understand the true nature of our situation." The debate continued for hours, or perhaps days. Time had little meaning in the space between galaxies. Each argument carried weight. Each perspective revealed new aspects of their impossible choice. They discussed the nature of consciousness, the value of individuality versus collective good, the responsibility they bore not just to their own species, but to the cosmic order itself. Dr. Blackthorne pulled up holographic displays showing the quantum signatures of civilizations that had chosen each path. "Look at the data," she said. "Species that chose transcendence show remarkable stability across all timelines. They become part of something that genuinely seems eternal. But those that chose to remain individual, some achieved heights of individual accomplishment that rival the collective's achievements. And some fell to extinction," Silverwind pointed out grimly. "The path of individual development carries risks that transcendence eliminates entirely." As the discussion continued, they began to notice something strange. The space around them was changing. responding to their thoughts and emotions. When they spoke of transcendence, the walls seemed to fade, revealing vistas of cosmic consciousness that stretched beyond perception. When they argued for individual choice, the room became more solid, more definitively human. The space itself is testing us, Valorian realized. Our environment is reflecting our collective unconscious, showing us glimpses of what each choice might mean. Outside, the assembled civilizations continued their patient vigil. Through the viewports, they could see vessels that pulsed with collective consciousness alongside others that maintained distinct individual auras. The universe itself seemed divided between these two paths of existence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of debate, Dr. Blackthorne spoke the words that would change everything. What if the choice itself is the point? What if the real test isn't which path we choose, but whether we're capable of making the choice freely, together as a unified species despite our individual differences? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They had been approaching the decision as a binary choice between two fixed paths, but perhaps there was something more subtle at work. Admiral Valorian stood slowly, feeling the weight of command and responsibility settling into crystal clarity. I think I understand now. The Eternal Collective doesn't need us to choose transcendence to succeed in their mission. They need us to be capable of choosing, period. They need species that can make difficult decisions together, that can balance individual desires with collective good. He looked around the table at his companions. We're not just choosing our species' future. We're demonstrating that humanity has evolved to the point where we can make such choices responsibly, that we can be trusted with the kind of power that shapes galactic civilizations. The decision, when it came, was unanimous, not because they all agreed on the same path, but because they all agreed on the principle that would guide them forward. They would choose to remain individual, but with full knowledge of their cosmic responsibilities. They would return to their galaxy not as they had left it, but as conscious participants in the greater pattern of universal evolution. They would guide humanity's development not through manipulation or control, but through the accumulated wisdom of those who had seen beyond the veil of ordinary existence. The response from the Eternal Collective came not in words, but in a feeling of cosmic approval that resonated through every atom of their being. Wisdom demonstrated, choice acknowledged. Welcome to the ranks of mature civilizations. As the human expedition prepared to return home, they carried with them something more valuable than any technology or weapon, the knowledge that humanity had passed its greatest test. They were ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, not as subjects in someone else's experiment, but as active participants in the cosmic drama of existence. The black ships of their descendants escorted them back to the galactic rim, and as they crossed the threshold back into familiar space, Admiral Valorian knew that humanity